All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're sitting out there in the auditorium, great. If you're standing out there, it's time to move over here because the real conversation is about to begin. I've been churning on AI because, you know, everybody, all they ever talk about on TV is AI, AI this, AI that. Check out what ChatGPT did for me today. I met 2 new girls on dating AI. I mean, it's everywhere, right? So you cannot turn on TV without seeing the words AI. And I made a joke earlier about NAB. So for years, NAB, everybody's signs are the same, but then the 2-letter acronym at the end of the sign, now in HD, now in 4K, now in 3D. So this year's, I'm sure, is going to be now with AI. Right. And so what I put this, panel together of crack specialists here of both people that are in the field using it, people that are developing around it, and people that are building the infrastructure for AI to talk about what's actually happening in the AI space in this market, not from this is a future crazy idea that's going to put a ton of people out of work, but what's working now, what's available now, and how is the infrastructure coming together around the capability of AI for the broadcast, post-production, sort of this market space. So gentlemen, introduce yourselves, and then let's have a little fun chatting.
Okay.
Starting on the end.
My name is Nick Kind. I'm with Pixitmedia. We run a smart storage ecosystem with AI-enabled storage.
My name's Erik Weaver. I work with the ETC. It's a nonprofit think tank in which I do innovative research and report to the CTO of Disney, Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount, Sony, Fox, Epic Games, and a couple others.
Erik's a little bit understated there. He actually works live AI productions. He's done a lot of short films. So he's actually walked and talked this whole thing. I've known him for like 15 years, but he's a very understated chap. Nick Jarvis, I work for Seagate. I'm working in the PLM group as well as system engineering group, as long as we're CTO. So I've got to dabble in various different things. And before I joined Seagate in December, I was actually very deep in AI from the NVIDIA Cloud GPU service providing as a technical advisor, business development. So I touched a lot of things from that perspective. And over to you, Craig.
Good afternoon, everybody. Craig Derringer with Mass Compute. We are an NVIDIA AI Cloud preferred partner, and I lead our customer-facing marketing, technology, and alliances team at Mass Compute. Thank you.
Incredible. Okay. Guys, everybody, just coming from the end down, give me one hype versus one reality about AI as it is right now. What is something that you're hearing that's not true, and what is something that is actually available and usable?
Sure. One thing that comes up a lot, even on my Uber on the way here, is AI going to take over the world tomorrow, and are they human yet? No, they aren't. They are not human. We are not at a place where you can talk to AI in a way that it completely understands. It understands a lot. And with that, we're able to work with the AI of today. For example, you mentioned ChatGPT. ChatGPT is becoming more and more pervasive because it continues improving every month to give you more and more answers that are more fine-tuned for your questions.
So, as Nick mentioned, we're working kind of on the front lines in which I'm working on both an animation using AI, a hybrid where we're shooting real time and then replacing everything, and a purely generative. So what I would say is not true is the jobs are absolutely not going away. This is not text to movie. Not even kind of. The same key components and department heads are going to be there. You're just going to have a new tool in the toolbox. We are shifting from bow and arrows right now to machine guns. There is a radical change coming. I'm sitting at the front line right now. What you're seeing out there on these cheesy services and stuff is nothing. Nothing compared to what's coming. What is not true is currently you really cannot produce an actual film using AI. If you look at the technology, typically most everything is doing 5-second clips. An average short film's doing about 15 seconds per cut. we really going to have to get into a much longer format there. But there are other ways around it. Like you could do the process that they talked about before, get that green poll, and then you could do video to video transfer. There's a lot of things that are coming up that you'll be seeing very soon. But in the next year, you're going to see radical change.
So Erik, let me double click on that for a second. So when you talk about like 5 seconds and 15 seconds, what is the usual turnaround time from concept to completion on such a small segment?
So the turnaround time, it just depends on which particular model you're using, if you're using something in the cloud or not in the cloud. So for example, we have an infrastructure that has a couple boxes that are ADA 6000s in them. We've got both Google and Amazon resources. We have virtual machines, a single log on, a mesh network. And now what we really need is what this guy has. I need H100s, H200s to train my LoRa models. And that can take a little while. That could take weeks sometimes. But some of the stuff, the production loop is going to get tighter. Once you've trained the model and you're going to execute it within the environment, that could take 10 seconds, 2 seconds, depending on what you're doing, upwards to like 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, it all varies on which model you're using.
Other Nick? Hype versus reality. We got a lot of Nicks up here. I apologize to everybody in advance. We were actually going to call this panel a bunch of Nicks and another guy, but we'll...
Right. You know, it kind of reminds me of, you know, if you, just to age myself, if you ever watched the Dolly Parton TV show 9 to 5, and you looked at that and you thought, there's one guy with 4 girls surrounding him and basically providing him services. Now today, it's one guy with a laptop. And what's happened there is technology has caught up to the position where it's actually taken a lot of those kind of jobs away, but those people haven't gone away. They've gone and done other things, better things. They've become better tooled and done more productive things. And that's what's actually going to actually happen. You know, AI is going to supercharge people and being able to actually do a lot more than what they're actually doing today. If you look at media entertainment, I mean, they're proposing, they think around 2035, they think about 30% of the work week hours is actually going to go away to AI. It's going to be more production on that side. They do foresee, you know, maybe 85 million people, you know, those skill sets going away, but there's going to be 97 million people. And that's the WEP actually saying that outside of this actual industry, you know, from that perspective. But again, if you look at a pilot today, in the old aircrafts of the 747, you used to have a flight engineer. You don't have a flight engineer anymore. You have a pilot, you have a co-pilot. And the reason for that is technology has enabled people to do more in less time. And the same kind of concept will actually come with AI. And, you know, I'll stop there.
Craig.
So much to talk about, for sure. Yeah, so in terms of what's the hype on AI, I mean, one of the things that I've seen is everybody's talking about AI, everybody's reading about AI, everybody's writing about AI. I had an opportunity to have a small luncheon with Michael Dell last year, about 20 of us, and I asked him at the time, what % of your Fortune 2000 clients do you feel are doing AI? Now, this was 6 or 9 months ago, so presumably it's going to be more. But in terms of like the hype versus the reality, I wish I would have recorded it, but I think he said 15 to 20%, which is also what we see. We have about 1,000, you know, we're an NVIDIA AI cloud. We have about 1,000 clients utilizing our service today. Most of them are SMB AI startups. A few of them are the Fortune 2000. And a buddy of mine similarly teaches at Wharton. He said most of his students, because he does a little AI project, he said most of them at the Fortune 2000, they're just starting to hire 1 or 2 people. So in terms of like hype versus reality, I guess that's the good news. We can all go start an AI company and we're not behind yet. And then in terms of the reality, I mean, we have clients across pretty much every single vertical you could imagine. A big one that's very heavily involved with AI, of course, is robotics. Another one is the medical device industry. They're using AI with computer vision to for robotic surgery in every operating room. And we have another client who's helping to detect, using AI and computer vision, the first cancer cell for, in this case, breast cancer. And they were going to start with the whole human body, but it was way too complex. So they've had to focus on just one disease. So there's literally thousands of AI companies out there that are now developing that same technology, but for brain cancer, for ear cancer, for eye cancer, et cetera.
So, Erik, I got a little head shake down there earlier. Was it the stat in agreement or disagreement? I would, and not to say that we want to
I
argue
think
or
that,
fight,
that
but
it's got to be
the discussion has to
exceptionally
happen.
higher than that. I mean, I know that he's giving it out because we get confused. We start thinking about generative AI in this context, but probably 80% or more is utility or things that are creeping into the tools we use every day, right? That's where it's really affecting the pipeline end to end. It's funny that they're like, oh, we're going to have these film conferences that are anti-AI. You're not going to be able to make a film if you're not using this
Well, what
technology.
software are you
'cause
going to
it's-
use that doesn't have AI built into
Yes.
it now? So you're going to go back to hand drawing animation?
Yeah, you're like, well, I mean, I really like the typewriter. From now on, I'm just going to use the typewriter every time.
Elon
It's a
Musk has got a
beautiful
robot
tool.
for that, so don't worry.
But
Yeah, coming back to that 15%, because I was involved in some of that. That 15% is actually focused on not utility tools or things like that. It's actually focused on creating your own Gen AI LLM models to actually enhance and
Yeah.
help that business. And so what
Totally.
Craig was alluding to there is out of the enterprise space, only 15% of those companies actually have active projects working on with people and actual resources being allocated and actually used. This year, they expect that to be about 65%, from that perspective. And so, Eric's completely correct on that. The Adobe has AI. Everybody who has a solution now says they have AI. Quite a bit of it is actually machine learning still.
Okay, so that's a really interesting because this whole concept of AI is not new, right? But where is the demarcation between machine learning, which is in everything?
It's the introduction in 2017 of the transformer model. And that is what allowed us to start not just saying like, this is my question and we've trained it to give you this answer. Now I have all of this knowledge, and you'll see people continuing to talk about how much knowledge can you stick into it. But the main point is at that point, we're now able to say, this is my question. This is the knowledge you have. Give me the best answer you can based on your knowledge, not a direct answer that you're pulling. So that's classical machine learning. And most of what we do today, including, for example, ChatGPT, is machine learning combined with AI. So you've got a little bit of both in there, but that's the way we're going to resolve these problems. It's algorithms, it's machine learning, and then AI on top of that.
Yeah, the other piece is the convolution networking, and that's where the imaging comes in. And various different companies are actually using those kind of models. Segueing over to Nicholas again, from that perspective. And so a lot of people don't realize that Gen AI is actually more ML than AI. It's kind of a combination of bringing those all together.
So large language models are actually not doing well in most of these big corporations because to hire the right talent and to execute these on a cultural basis is actually a bit tougher than people might think. And so if you look at the trending numbers, there's a fairly high failure rate where they're trying to run their own models.
Is that a failure rate on the experience required to make it work, the training, or just that the machine is ghosting and coming up with its own answers?
Actually, what's interesting is that when people go through this experience, 90 to 95% of that 15% that Craig was actually alluding to go to the public cloud, go to the hypervisors, because people actually realize that they don't know what they don't know. And they're going in there to just kind of work things out. Their experiences there is basically going into a sandbox. They're given a lovely kitchen to play with, very bland ingredients, but when they actually get to the point where they actually want to bake their own cake, what happens there is they're asked to leave that room, go up the corridor and go to the mothership, and suddenly the scale of the cost goes from tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands to like a 10 million just for a single model. People are actually becoming savvy to that, and they're actually going to like authorized NVIDIA cloud service providers like CoreWeave and Mass Compute, Labamba, and those kind of folks. And what they bring is they don't just bring the same kind of capabilities, but they also bring the expertise. Okay, when you engage these people, you're engaging with people who can actually help you do the code conversions between the GPU models, everywhere to actually performance tuning and tweaking and all these kind of things, as well as having access earlier on to About 9 months before it becomes general in the public, the latest generations of the NVIDIA hardware as well as software. And so a lot of these failures are actually to do with the fact that they've gone into a sandbox and no one's helping them. So the smart ones are actually going to the authorized cloud service providers.
So, I mean, I saw a stat recently that said the average model is going to cost you around $100 million to build. And if you go back and you look at something like an H100, H200, can you even get one? I mean, not alone be able to afford it, can you get one? Only certain people have the supplies. There are huge allotments dedicated to people. So folks like this are important.
Well, definitely one of the things that we see is if you're going to create a very large language model, I guess would be an LLM by definition, as you mentioned, Eric, is it can cost 100 million plus or minus or even more. At the same time, there are many companies out there. There's over 1 million LLMs on Hugging Face now. There were only 40,000 like 2 years ago. And so there are people, I don't know the technical term on what it's called, you all might, but they're creating, I'm going to say small language models where they're focused on not solving the entire world's problem, but like the examples I was giving about detecting the first cancer cell. And so you can develop those for less, 100,000, 500,000, maybe a few million. It's not really known yet. And I think one of the things that Erik had brought up earlier, like we're a horizontal play. So I do believe and look forward to learning more from Erik and the folks here. It does seem like media and entertainment might be more ahead of the curve than perhaps the average vertical in terms of AI.
But the trick there is you've got to build a small model based on a large model. So you have to have access to rights, which gets into basically the ethics here in Hollywood. So there's your new underlying problem, understanding provenance, where that material is coming from, and do you have that?
So it's become less about job loss, but more about copyright of the training of the model itself. Right, and who owns that data? And I think that's not even just an M&E issue. That's every industry is having that impact right now. Look at what just happened with Studio Ghibli and the argument, where it's like, hey, you cannot create content that looks like mine because therefore you've trained it on mine, right? So I want to dale out just for a minute here and talk from a functional standpoint what each of your organizations are sort of doing to enable to build. But I'm going to start on Craig's side over here because I think it's sort of this. If you look down the line here, it
makes the most sense.
It makes a lot of sense, right? So Craig, from an infrastructure standpoint, explain to people what you guys are doing, what you're building, and how that's enabling the industry.
Yeah, certainly. So we're providing the H100s, the A100s, the H200s. The numbers are not important. These are, NVIDIA GPUs. And Jensen and the NVIDIA is now coming out with a GPU every year. Now, so what we do is we provide those for rent. 25 cents an hour, $1 an hour, $2 an hour, $3 an hour, $4 an hour. The more powerful ones cost more, the less powerful ones are less, but they are hugely, hugely faster than existing CPUs and compute, which as an example, one of our clients ran a test in the semiconductor industry with 7 PhD scientists at the customer site that were using the fastest Intel CPUs in the world. And they had defined their process and pipeline for the last 5 years. One H100 was 31,250 times faster than the fastest thing that these 7 PhDs had figured out over the last 5 years. So when you look, it's not 31,000 times more expensive, but it was 31,000 times faster. So I just share that as one example about how and why people want these GPUs, because the capabilities of them are astounding. So we're very simple. Anybody here could go on and rent a GPU from us right now while we're talking for 25 cents. And now what you do with it, that's a whole nother thing. And you need the people that have the expertise to know what to do with it.
How many GPUs are you currently sitting on?
We have thousands, and we have about a dozen clients right now that are asking for another 1 to 15,000. So we don't focus on the 300,000 GPU clusters like Elon Musk and Sam Altman do. We're focused on more like probably a lot of people here that need between 1 and 5,000 GPUs, which is still a lot. That could be $50 million or more.
So the trick between going from an ADA or an A1000 or whatever 2 in H, right, is the RAM footprint. You have to load the models up into the RAM and then process it. And if you have a large model, you cannot load it onto some of these smaller GPUs, A6000s or the ADAs.
You read my mind on that one, Eric. I was going to ask what the differences are, or why I would go to one over the other. It's very interesting. But I know why I can't get a GPU these days. He's got them all. Nick.
Well, there's another aspect to that, which is that when you go between different GPU vendors, GPU sets and models, you have to do some code conversion, and that can take anywhere from weeks to months. And that's where you want to leverage the expertise of folks like Craig. They have that kind of IP on set. From that perspective. Seagate, obviously, we do devices, but we also do systems where you can build your own storage. But from the AI perspective, we're already embedded with the hyperscalers. They consume a huge amount of our devices from that perspective. We're also doing our own kind of leading edge stuff from that perspective. Excuse me, at GTC recently, which is the NVIDIA Developer Conference, that was in San Jose a couple of weeks ago, we were actually showing some open source NVIDIA AI store platform, which is very similar to the Minio IO. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically a software orchestration layer platform that enables you to unify various different types of storage together to achieve the end result. Whether you're doing data ingest, data prep, inference, or the modeling and then the inference from that perspective. And so we were demonstrating some NVRAM along with some back-end disk and also our live cloud. So we were clearly showing that our live cloud service, which is an object cloud storage service, which is S3 compliant, so you can take your existing AWS S3 applications and put it onto us. We were demonstrating that you could uniformly use our NVMe as well as our spinning hard drives and the cloud within that whole AI workflow from that perspective. We also have the live mobile. So, when it comes to actually getting the data there, so, folks like Craig, as well as Eric, as well as Nicholas can actually leverage the live mobile service, which enables you to have mobile devices, whether they're block or NAS, out there in the field, whether they're rigged on a helicopter or a submarine or a boat or car, and move that content to Seagate's live cloud facility, provide it as a bucket, or directly to their facilities. And so AI, it's important to actually get the right data, not manufactured data, but actually real data into the workflow. And so we're helping AI folks from that perspective to bring it into the data center, store the data, the pre-analytical data out on the cloud to pull it into these environments like mass compute or customers' on-prem facilities, and then also take that finished model and put it and run it there. I'll finish very quickly, Eric. So what's actually interesting is that some of the folks in the industry, including Microsoft in the Azure group, are actually coming to recognize that they don't need NVMe for everything. They've actually recognized that for certain parts of the actual process, whether it's data ingest or data prep, they can actually get away with object storage. Okay, so folks wanting to do it on-prem can actually leverage Seagate solutions for that, but they can also leverage the live cloud for part of that AI workflow. And so this is moving extremely quickly. In the past, everybody thought everything had to be on NVMe, but the reality is that you can actually do a lot of the AI workflow actually on a combination of NVMe as well as object storage. And that's where that GTC comes in play, where it was actually demonstrating a tiered approach, hybrid approach to using NVMe in the right place as well as object storage. Because the key thing about AI and getting the right result is having enough data to do that. And if you do all NVMe, you can't have enough data because you can't have enough capacity to fulfill that need. So having a combination of all those different data assets is very important.
And obviously, object store has gotten fast enough now that it can actually engage in these types of workflows, which is, it's kind of lessen the requirement to a certain degree.
Yeah, Microsoft is actually what they're doing to allow you to work with object storage is they're actually, instead of doing real-time streaming of the actual content, they're packing it up into these large chunks and then pushing it through. And in certain types of AI workloads, about 75% of them, you can actually leverage that kind of capability.
Nice. All right, Eric, I'm going to ask you to hold, because if we look at the structure here, it's infrastructure, it's data movement, it's utilization, and then finally you at the end. consuming, right? And
But I do have to make one comment on
Do
his.
it.
It's sometimes the controller node and the object storage will be based on NVMe for speed.
the gateway, absolutely, right? The cache. Yep.
That's where the AI store comes in.
Yeah, yeah. So just one thing before I go into what we do with AI is where we found the problem from a storage perspective. And what we noticed across working with all these different media companies is there is a hell of a lot of metadata that doesn't currently exist, and it should. So the first thing we decided to do was take a look at how we want to design our AI products. So we use all open source, open weight models when possible. And our goal is ultimately to provide people with the newest in AI as it happens. So if there's a new model, our AI platform is designed to take on that new model. It's about one line of code to switch to a new model on our system. So that way we're able to constantly stay at the newest of all of the different variations of models that we work with. So with that in mind, what we're currently doing is generating metadata across the global namespace so that no matter if you have no matter if you have media in the cloud, on a digitized tape library, in nearline archive, in NVMe, we can generate that metadata so that you get access to your media no matter where you're at, and it all has just a massive quantity of important metadata. And we do that through the audio recognition currently, but we are working and have been working, and those of us who know Pixitmedia and our history know that we have a lot of research done across a variety of types of models. So it's not just solely a audio recognition. It's always looking to see how we can help our storage ecosystem help your media. And so there's a lot of different ways that can go, and just know that that is just the first thing we're doing.
So what I'm hearing though from your side is it's really about metadata creation.
Yes.
Right. It's building up
And-
better search tools.
Yeah, and then you bring up search. So search is a big thing, and there's a variety of ways that you can do that. With ours, it is all based upon the metadata and searching across that. You can very easily do a Google search on searchability with AI and see that there is it's not the only way. Metadata is important, but searching through your content and finding the information you need is ultimately what's most important, and metadata is one way of achieving that.
I'm going to get skewered by about 5 of my partners and a bunch of people that are going to hate me forever. But AI, in my mind, is the death of MAM, the death of PAM, and because when we look traditionally, why we needed a MAM, a DAM, a PAM, it was to get metadata in and then to find things. And now that search is embedded in everything, and now that AI can actually do better metadata entry than humans can do from that perspective by drawing context to it, I see that there is less and less reason for a MAM to sit over the top of my content, and especially if we have federated search across multiple databases that an AI can aggregate and bring that data and give us all this information from different platforms, which is much harder to do if I'm centralizing around a single MAM or a single DAM. So I think it's on life support right now. Sorry guys, but that we will not need this sort of the concept of what we see as a MAM right now or a DAM probably in the next 3 to 5 years.
I remember, when I used to do a lot of NAS, I was at Isilon and Blue Arc and various other different companies. And we had a solution where we had to, the most active data or the data that was actually going to become relevant within a time period, we had to leave it on the fastest storage media. To control the metadata access. But now with Nicholas's Pixitmedia, you can basically have the data anywhere. And so that basically gives you the opportunity, instead of actually spending too much on tier 1 storage, NVMe, you can actually put that on disk, you can put that onto on-prem object, or you can put that onto a cloud platform from the storage aspects. And so that gives you a lot of versatility in your budget and also portability and accessibility. So that's kind of huge.
There was an interesting statistic from a number of years ago from the CatDV guys that was saying that when they were analyzing the utilization of their DAMs, that 60% of the utilization was in search. The rest of it was in workflow in the rest, right? There was more time was spent searching, right? And that's really what this is all kind of boiled into, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and just one quick highlight on that piece. It's very easy to see if you work for in the media and entertainment industry, when we talk metadata, there's not usually a single person that's required to be generating all that metadata. So there is not going to be job loss as you get more efficient metadata systems. I also will disagree with you on the MAM thing. I think they're continuing to change. They're shifting. We will see what happens. But I certainly will say that what we're not, in our position, we're not trying to take them out or do anything like that. Our goal is to integrate with them whenever possible.
I don't think you guys are trying to take them out. What I see is the reason you traditionally bought them was, one, to have a place to put the metadata, two, then to organize the content, interface with the archive, and all those things are getting built into the main tools now, right? If we're getting out of tape or we're moving into object, then there's less need for an HSM, right? I mean, so all the tools that were sort of built to coincide with the MAM are starting to get integrated into a single stack now, where I don't necessarily have to have all these third-party applications near as much as I used to.
So a lot of the way that their system works, or the way we saw it coming, I used to work at Western Digital. I ran global strategy for a couple of years over there. And we called it abstraction. And abstraction basically creates a layer over everything that knows what and where and why everything is. And you could create these secondary databases that would be able to correlate all that data. What you're going to see now is more systems are kicking out data than ever before. And it will be absolutely critical. So things like Perplexity AI and some of these other tools are really going to be critical foundation layers to understanding things. So in context, let me talk about a slice of American cheese. Does anybody know what slice of American cheese is? Nope. So it's the first AI generated image that has received a copyright, right? So when they first submitted to get their copyright, they said, look, we put in over 400 prompts, blah, blah, blah. We did so many iterations, and the Copyright Office said, no, kicked it back. So then they had to document how they manipulated or changed that component. So this is a still image, and they send it back in, and now they have a documented process. How are you going to own your copyright on individual characters, scenes, and aspects if you're a major studio? You've got to track everything. You've got to track the origin of the idea through its ideation, through what it touched, how it percentage AI manipulated or came up with the image, to what you have changed from that perspective. The whole thing. This is an unhuman manageable process, right? So it will be utterly critical if you think you're going to actually put content out that's copyrightable.
Erik, that scares me. That just sounds like we need more lawyers. And I don't.
Yeah.
Erik, so we kind of worked through the. That was common enough. We've sort of worked through the infrastructure side of it. So talk to me a little about what you guys do at ETC and how you're enabling AI for this space.
So, like I said, I'm working on 3 different productions right now. So what we're doing is we're taking a traditional process and we're saying, okay, if I was moving from a non-VFX world to a VFX world, a film world to a digital world, how are things changing? And we tend to get in our minds kind of caught up in the way things worked before and the limitations of things before. So we're trying to recreate these pipelines. And we begin to replace things when they need to be replaced. We kind of upgrade them or change them or switch them out for tools that are using AI along the pipeline. We still intend on empowering the creative throughout the entire process, keeping many of these same folks around that just learning how to use different tool sets. And then we document the whole thing. And then we publish free white papers for anybody to look at and watch and say, okay, this is pretty interesting. I get why you wouldn't do that anymore. Like, I was over at Disney just earlier this week, and on the walls, all you see are these beautiful animatics and animation pieces that are setting up a style, a design, a look. Again, that's a small language model now. You're taking a bigger model, you're training it on so many images, and then you're going to get a feel of the whole thing. One of the best videos you can see out there today on this process is Cuco, C-U-C-O by Paul Trillo. Have you seen this one? It's amazing. He works with the artist, he gets 100 assets, and he turns them into an infinite number of assets. Now he can rebuild his world in this style, and then he does a style transfer on top of that. But again, we're kind of doing beachheads in the new worlds and seeing what's there, how's things going to change and documenting it.
All right, we're rounding up our time. Last word. I want to work down the panel from Craig, from your side again. What's missing from this industry, either from a conversation standpoint or a technology standpoint?
Well, one thing that we certainly see a shortage of is the skills to do everything that we're talking about here right now in terms of the demand and interest to do AI versus the skill set to do AI. So one of my neighbors is a computer science grad, 10 years. I won't name the name of the companies, but he's been doing it for 10 years. He found out what I was doing. He's like, Craig, I got to get into AI. And I'm like, well, Mike, you're our computer science guy. How hard can it be? Just start doing AI computer stuff. He's like, no, it's completely different. I have to go back to school for 2 years, or I need to study like every night for 4 hours on my own. So the way that people do Java and C++ and whatever people are doing for computer programming today, it's a whole different world for AI ML. And so I think will be one of the challenges for many of the universities for people to study on their own. We're working with one of the UCs right now with a guy that studied under Jan McCune. He's the second guy hired there at this particular UC, which is a top 5, and they're just launching their first class. So, yeah.
Nick.
I'm going to keep mine storage centric, but I could talk about the other stuff. But what people are looking for, from that perspective, AI store kind of touches on a mini IO, but people are actually trying to put the right infrastructure in at the right time and to have a seamless single pane of glass that actually kind of manages the whole workflow, but more importantly, speaks the language of the people who are actually using it. So there's various different solutions that we're actually doing some work with, which we can't talk about right now, but having a single pane of glass and talking to someone from the media and entertainment side saying, well, I need 40 Maya stations, 4 Avid workstations, blah, 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 and hide all the infrastructure behind that. And so that kind of technology is really critical. In the AI workplace, they need the same kind of situation where you can basically go and choose the appropriate software tools and the stack and everything like that. But there's another layer below that, which is actually required, which is when you have that data asset and it's in an AI GPU node, and it's going to be used by other GPUs, you want to have a certain level of intelligence where you can actually make sure that copy is in the other GPUs without having to actually pull it from the slower storage. What that means is that you can do a lot more object storage below the scenes than having to have a larger pool of NVMe stacks. And that's some of the technology that I think has to come to bear. And we're working on it. We're working with various different open source solutions from that, but I can't say any more. But I think that's the piece that's definitely going to be required there, is drive down the costs, improve the green effect, which is a huge problem with AI right now. And kind of bring that all together in a nice bow, from the orchestration layer as well as the management layer.
So I think that's a good perspective from the infrastructure layer. When it comes to AI, I think that Comfy UI is kind of ruling the roost as a main kind of control panel where you're dropping your tools into. And if you're paying attention to that, I think it's critical. So what I would kind of tend to lean towards his argument. We need people. Everyone I know is busy as they can be. They have jobs everywhere. They're desperate for people. And what we're finding is the people who understood things like storytelling and the language of story do the best, right? Because that's what this is all about in the end. So I would just encourage people to begin to start looking at things and understanding how they work. Because I am telling you, within the next 12 to 18 months, there's going to be a radical change.
I will kind of tie in most of what you guys all have said at this point, but our greatest need in the immediate future, and it's very similar to what you're saying, more prompt engineers, or if you don't want to call it engineer, just people that understand what they're doing on the front end of using AI across the industry. And what helps with that is a sleeker, easier system to use is a lot better for most people. So it's in the immediate future, we need more people. But on the other hand, we also want to simplify it. So we need it to continue to be simplified so that the average person can use AI just like for example, any tool that we make, I want my dad, who has not the same level of technical knowledge as me by any means, to be able to pick it up and know exactly how to get the metadata he wants or the video inferencing he wants. So that's where I think the industry needs to go.
You know what I love about this panel is there's an hour-long conversation to each one of you that should be explored. Sounds like we need another podcast going on here. Hey, listen, everybody, this has been a phenomenal time. I thanks everybody to up on the stage from the Seagate and Pixit. They have booths out here, so if you want to pick this conversation up with the two Nicks, go hit them at their booth and keep the conversation going. For Craig and Erik, I mean, if you guys are hanging around for a bit, please stop them, have a conversation, and again, pick up the narrative here because there sounds like education is the thread that I heard through all of this that's missing the most, right? Education both on the tech, education on the process, and education on the future. So great work, all of you. Thank you so much. Stay tuned. Matt Lukens from NDI will be up in a little bit to talk about where NDI is going, and we got all kinds of tech happening out there, so go have some fun and get a drink.
Thank you.